You are listening to the Stop Binge Eating podcast with Kirstin Sarfde, episode number 26. Welcome to the Stop Binge Eating podcast. It's time for you to end your food obsession and begin feeling confident and in control around food. You are absolutely capable of eliminating binge eating from your life, and I'm going to show you how by giving you simple tools and insights that you can apply in your own life. I'm your host, Kirstin Sarfde. Now let's get to it. Hey you, what's up? What's going on? Me, I'm super pumped because I just signed on 3 new clients earlier today and they are all so excited to do this work. That's the best when I'm excited and they're excited, and it just makes for a great foundation for change. So are you excited too? Because if not, you should be, because today we're talking about the beliefs that you've established throughout your life about food and eating. When people are trying to figure out why they are where they are, they tend to look into their past to see what they've been taught, what was modeled, and what they've been believing that got them there. They think about what their parents taught them, what society taught them, what magazines and books taught them, what their friends and teachers taught them, and what they taught themselves. They think about what they have just always done and what they've seen other people do time and time again. All this repetition of what they've learned and seen become what they believe to be true. What a lot of people do is hold on to these beliefs and think this is just how it is for the rest of their life. This is who they've become, this is what they believe, this is what they do, and there's nothing they can do about it. There were definitely beliefs that I developed throughout my life that kept me binge eating, and I didn't even realize it. One was that I created this belief for myself that I was a person who would always desire to eat unhealthy and want to eat too frequently. And I'd have to battle with this against my desire to be healthy for the rest of my life. Because growing up, we always had snack foods in the house, and I ate them often and in large quantities, even when I wasn't hungry, and was never told that I shouldn't do otherwise. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. But then once I got to my highest weight, which then led to my weight loss, that led to my binge eating, I blamed the lack of healthy eating guidance for starting it all and for continuing it. I would think that if I'd never had those bad eating habits to begin with, then after I got to my goal weight, I wouldn't have had bad eating habits to revert back to. I also created beliefs that I had to count calories in order to not gain weight. That if I didn't track my calories, then I would overeat, that I couldn't trust myself. Me continually believing all these things and thinking this is just the person I've become was not at all useful to me. It wasn't useful to think I was destined to always be an unhealthy eater, or that I needed something outside of my body to gauge when I should be eating. I thought I was just speaking the truth, but for me now, I don't believe any of it as true at all. I'm not programmed to eat unhealthy all the time. I don't need to count calories to lose or maintain my weight. I can not overeat without tracking exactly what I'm eating, and I can trust myself. We get taught to believe so many things throughout our lives, either directly or indirectly. Either someone tells us what to believe, or we find it on our own and teach ourselves, or we interpret what is done by other people or ourselves to make it mean something that we start believing. The problem most people fall into is that once they have learned these beliefs and they've held on to them for a long time, they don't know how to let them go if they're not serving them in their lives anymore. Or maybe they don't even know that they can let them go. Like I said, I thought that what I believed about who I was how I was going to be. But no. It can all change. So I've made a list of just some of the beliefs that I hear from my clients that they learned at some point in their lives, and I'm going to go through them right now. So see if any of these ring true for you too. Number 1, you have to finish everything on your plate. So many of us were taught this one, right? Maybe back then portions were smaller, so it made sense. Or your family didn't have a lot of money, so nothing was allowed to be wasted. You were told time and time again that everything on your plate must be eaten, and that's why now you always feel compelled to eat everything on your plate, even if it's one of the gigantic portions that a lot of restaurants serve these days. Number 2, eating makes you feel better. And I'm talking emotionally, not that you feel better because you were physically hungry and now you're not. I mean, if you feel sad, you eat a cookie. We associate comfort and love and happiness and relaxation with food. Now, this is a tricky one because food actually can make you feel better. The feel-good chemicals in your brain do get released when you eat, and even more so when you eat sugar or processed foods, but just for a short moment. And far too often, what it really does is make you feel worse, and we've all experienced that. There's also something to be said for when you have this expectation that you will feel better if you eat some Reese's peanut butter cups, but then you don't get that feeling you wanted, or you did, but it didn't last long enough. So you keep eating, looking to feel better, thinking that it will come, but it doesn't. And before you know it, they're all gone and you feel worse than when you began. Number 3, I need to binge. This is one that might come up when you feel an urge. As soon as you start thinking that binging is necessary, that you need to do it, then you're going to feel compelled to do it. You're going to think it's the only way out. Or maybe you're just feeling really stressed, overwhelmed, or angry. And again, binging is the way out. You think you need to binge in order to feel a release, but you gotta know that binging is never, ever necessary. It's not the only way to relieve your urges or your feelings. Number 4, eating junk food is not allowed. This is actually the opposite of what I experienced growing up. And in my binge years, I always wished that I had been brought up in a healthy foods only household. But then I learned that those who did can also find themselves headed down an unhealthy eating path. Theirs is more of a rebellion thing where they just want some dang sugar and it's not allowed, so they have to be secret about it. They're basically being taught to restrict. What this can cause is a negative cycle of doing something they have been taught is wrong, which is eating some kind of unhealthy food. So they feel ashamed, and then that shame causes them to eat more or restrict themselves as a punishment, which of course leads to binging later. This could teach them that these foods are bad and that they shouldn't eat them. And if they do, then they're bad. Not a useful way to think about food, as I've talked about in previous episodes. And number 5, last one I got for you. One of the most common ones I hear, I can't stop eating. And this is a big one. It's one that most of you think is a fact, but I assure you it is not. It is absolutely a belief that you've ingrained in yourself over the years. And what happens when you think it? You feel out of control and you keep eating. You may say that you have all of this evidence to prove it true, but I assure you that you also have evidence to prove it false. There have been times you've stopped eating. There have been times you've stopped in the midst of a binge. It's happened. So being so assertive, saying that you can't stop eating or you have no control is not doing you any good. You can stop, but you're choosing to keep eating. And if you don't know why you're choosing to keep eating, you can go back and listen to episode 5 about why you want to binge. So there's just some beliefs around eating that I hear often. There's so many more, but I don't want to spend hours going over all the counterproductive beliefs people learn in their past that keep them binge eating. And I'm sure I have previously and will in the future touch on all the other ones. So what are some of the beliefs that you've developed throughout your life about food and eating that you still believe today? If you find these beliefs that are not serving you anymore, or especially if they never did, it is time to let them go. It's time to see the truth behind them and start believing what you want to believe instead. No matter what your mom always said, what people told you, what you've been telling yourself for years, you can decide right now that you want to believe something entirely different. Isn't that cool? You're a grown up. You make your own decisions. You can decide what you want to believe. But first, you got to know what beliefs have been established in you, and you might not really know. The belief that it's okay to eat any kind of food all the time, whether I'm hungry or not, that I didn't even realize was a belief. It was just a normal thing to me, and I didn't think twice about it. But once I realized it, I worked on changing it. I've changed a lot of my beliefs in order to get where I am now. Some I'm still working on. I am a work in progress too, you guys. But some seriously life-changing shifts have happened in how I think about food, eating, my body, and my weight because I've consciously decided to believe something else. Beliefs are just thoughts that we've thought over and over. They are an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists, and you can accept something else. You can think something else over and over until it feels as true as the old belief. You can let your old beliefs go once you see that they're not what you want to be believing, that they're not serving you, and that you don't see truth in them anymore. The more falseness you can find in your old beliefs, the easier it will be to let them go. We all change our beliefs all the time. Sometimes it's just not so consciously done. Here's an example. I knew a guy who was a friend of a bunch of friends, and I only saw him once in a while when his band would play. And I never really talked to him, but I would see him on stage and think that he was kind of a douche. Then a good friend of mine told me that she thought the same thing, and we would talk about why. And my belief about him being a douche was strengthened the more we talked about it, and the more she confirmed that she agreed. So for the longest time, I had zero desire to talk to him more than I had to. And when I was around him, I was disinterested in anything he said or did. Then one day, I actually talked to him, and he was kind of cool, and I kind of had a good time, and I started to actually like him as a person. Maybe he wasn't so douchey after all. Maybe I was just seeing his stage persona, which actually wasn't the person that he is when you get to know him and have a conversation. Who knew? So after gathering evidence that was contrary to my original belief, I started believing that he was a cool guy, which was great because I saw him at many more social gatherings and we'd have a great time hanging out when we did. I honestly no longer believe that he's a douche, even when he's on stage. So what happened was that I had a thought about him, that he's a douche, and I repeated it every time I saw him or talked about him, and this repetitiveness turned a one-time thought into a strengthened belief. Then I challenged this belief by actually talking to him and getting to know him better, and I let that old belief go as I didn't see any douchiness in him once I got to know him and stuck with my new belief about him being cool. And this was really good too because I no longer felt negatively when I was around him. Not liking someone I saw rather often did not serve me. It made me cold and unfriendly, which is the opposite of how I want to be and how I think I genuinely am. It's the same with your beliefs about food and eating and yourself. Do the beliefs you're holding on to for all these years serve you? Did they ever? Do you still believe them? If not, then you can decide to start believing something new and start looking for the evidence that this is what is true for you now, not the old, not serving you beliefs. The evidence for what you want to believe exists, but you have to decide what it is you want, practice thinking about it, and then you will see it. Growing up, I learned that it's okay to eat anything and everything whenever I felt like eating. That dessert comes after dinner every night, that snacking is normal, that bagels for breakfast is normal, and pizza and french fries for lunch pretty much every day was a fine meal. Yeah, I don't know about your high school, but pizza and french fries was served every day at mine, and it was the most popular meal. So what do I believe now? I believe that eating all the time whenever I feel like eating is not okay for me and not at all beneficial for me, for my weight and my physiology. I don't feel good in so many ways when I do that. I believe that dessert doesn't always have to come after dinner. And I honestly rarely eat dessert after dinner if I'm eating at home simply because I don't like to eat sugar or flour that late in the day. I believe that snacking doesn't need to be a regular part of how I eat day to day. I believe that I'm much better off having protein, fat, and vegetables for breakfast, and that's what I aim for. And I believe that pizza and french fries is a terrible daily lunch. Can't believe that I used to eat that so often. But nowadays, there are still times where I'll eat that for a meal. I'm not going to lie. But it's rare, and I definitely don't do it multiple times a week. So now you don't have to believe that you have to eat until you clean your plate, if that means that you're overeating. You can believe that eating according to when your body tells you it's full is the way to know when to stop eating. You don't have to believe that eating is the way to feel better. You can believe that changing your thinking is how you do it. You don't have to believe that you need to binge. You can believe that you can allow your urges to pass instead. You don't have to believe that sugar, flour, or processed foods are bad. You can believe that they are foods to be enjoyed and eaten on occasion. And you don't have to believe that you can't stop eating. You can believe that you can, that you have, and that you're working on stopping more often. You have developed beliefs over time, and now you get to decide whether or not you want to keep believing them. It is your responsibility to check in with what you believe and choose to keep them or let go of them deliberately. What keeps you binging is continuing to believe what does not benefit you. So figure out what will benefit you and believe that. This week, find one belief from your past that is keeping you stuck in your binge eating and see how it's affecting you and decide consciously what you want to believe instead. And then practice believing and look for all the evidence to support it. You'll see it when you believe it. Have a great week. Remember that you're just one decision away. And this week, it's one decision about holding on to a belief. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Stop Binge Eating podcast. If you like what you heard today and you want more, go to coachkir.com/free. That's COACHKIR.com/free to get some awesome free stuff to help you stop binge eating.